Today's topic is parallel lines. So we're still talking about linear equations, we're talking about lines, but today we're looking at two different lines and ones that are parallel. You might already know what parallel lines are, but just to lead into things, we're going to do like a little discovery here to kind of discover a little bit or what we need to know about lines that are parallel. So they asked me to graph both of these lines on the same graph here. So the first one is in mx plus b. Hopefully that's pretty easy, I guess I should say, to graph. The y-intercept is 6 of this line. So I'll do this one in pink. So I'd go up 6, I'd plot a point, and then I'd count my slope. So I would go down 3 and right 4. Always count right. Okay, so there's the first line. The second line I'm going to do in green, and the problem with this line is it's in standard form. It's not in y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to move this into slope intercept, and to do that I'm going to subtract the 6x first. And then I'm going to divide by 8 and divide everything by 8. And I would get y equals, you should reduce the slope. So the slope is 6 over 8. Remember the trick in the fraction, or in the calculator with the fraction button. Hopefully that's like pretty easy for you to simplify, but if not, no shame going to your calculator. That's just negative 3/4, 6 over 8. And then 16 divided by 8 is 2. Okay, so there's the second line. That one starts at 2 and goes down 3, right 4. Okay, so there's my two lines, and if you notice anything about the lines, so here was the green one, here was the pink one, hopefully you can pick out that they have the exact same slope, negative 3 over 4. What's different about the two lines? Well, the slope was the same, but the y-intercepts are different. So if I put those two things together, that is exactly what I need to know for today about parallel lines. And you guys, these lines are parallel. If you know anything about parallel lines already, they're lines that never cross. So in any direction, I could extend these, or in either direction, I should say, and they will literally never cross each other. So let's go ahead and put these two things together. What we need to know about parallel lines. So I'm going to say parallel lines, which are lines that don't intersect. They have the same slope and different y-intercepts. And the big part of that, you guys, is that they have the same slope. Honestly, if you can remember like that big thing, that one thing, you should be okay for today as long as your old skills from this unit are intact. Okay, so parallel lines have the same slope. You might see me use this symbol, you guys, for parallel, and it just looks like this. Like two like sideways lines. That's the symbol for parallel. Okay, so if you see me use that, I'm just being lazy and using a symbol. All right, so there's really like two types of questions. The first question is they'll give you the equation of two different lines, not the picture. They'll give you the equation, and they'll say, hey, tell me if these lines are parallel or not. So, I mean, sure, I could draw the picture. I could see, all right, do these lines cross? Are they going to ever intersect? I could do that, absolutely, but realize that it would be so much easier to just look to see if they have the same slope and different y-intercepts. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to look at the slope. And if I need to say what the slope is by just looking at the equation, I need to be in mx plus b. So in A, the first line is in mx plus b. So I can tell by looking at that the slope, or the number in front of x, my m value, is 2. So if the second line has a slope of 2 but a different y-intercept, then these lines are going to be parallel. Notice that this second line is written in standard form, so I need to get it into mx plus b by subtracting the 2x over. Now if I look at it, okay, I see that the slope is negative 2. So obviously, if the slopes are not the same, I mean, sure, they're both 2's, you guys, but 2 and negative 2 are totally different numbers. So these are not parallel. And if I have to explain it, I could just say they have different slopes. If they have different slopes, they will eventually cross. Okay, it's only when we have the exact same slope and we're different lines that we're parallel. All right, so example B, the second line is easier to look at on this one. I can just look at this one and say, all right, that's an mx plus b. The slope is 5 over 2. The first line, though, I'm going to have to move stuff around to solve that for y. So that is not nearly enough room for me. I write way too big. So let's shift things down here. And I'm going to solve for y by subtracting 5x first. Keep the negative there. That's negative 2y equals negative 5x plus 8. And then I would divide by negative 2. So now I've got the line y equals a negative over negative is a positive 5 halves x, and 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. Now I can see that the slope is 5 over 2, but be careful, you guys. So here's the two lines. That one and this one. So sure, they do have the same slope, but these lines actually are not parallel because look, they have the exact same y-intercept. So if I were to graph this, it would be the exact same line. And obviously parallel lines are different lines, so this one's kind of tricky. You just gotta look closely. These are not parallel. I'm gonna use the symbol because I'm running out of room. Not parallel, they're the same line. Okay, they've got to have different y-intercepts to actually be parallel. So be careful there, don't get tricked up. I want you guys to try C. See if you can tell me by looking at the slopes if these lines are parallel or not. So that's the first type of question. They'll just give you two lines, the equations, and they'll say, hey, tell me if they're parallel or not. The second type of problem, they're going to ask you to write the equation of a line. And anytime you're asked to write an equation of a line, you just need to write it in y equals mx plus b. We have done a lot of this, you guys. To do that, I just need two things. I need the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, if I can find the two things about the line, then I can go ahead and write the equation. So let's read this further. It says, write the equation of the line that's parallel. So it's parallel to this line, and it goes through the point 7, negative 2. Okay. When in doubt, I mean, yeah, I could always draw a picture. I could graph this line, think about the fact that I'm parallel to it, so what does that tell me? And I could plot this point and figure out, you know, what my line looks like if it goes through that point. Sure, I could work with that, but there is a quicker way to do it. So like I said, I just need the slope and I need the y-intercept. So I'm going to give you some steps to follow to find those two things so you can write your answer. The first step would be to find the slope of the line that was given to you. So find the slope of the given line. Once you've done that, find the slope of your new line. Well, that was messy. That says new. Find the slope of the new line, and then you're just going to use this same slope to do that because I know that parallel lines have the exact same slope. So let me show you what I mean. I want to be parallel to this line. Well, this line has a slope of negative 3. If I want to be parallel, I want to have the exact same slope as that line. So I'm also going to use -3 as my slope. Use the same one. So I can start my answer. Y equals, I'm going to use -3 as my slope. I just need to figure out what the y-intercept is. So doing the slope part, that should be pretty straightforward. You just use the same slope as the line that was given to you because you want to be parallel to it. But I can't use the same y-intercept because I'm talking about a different line. My line needs to go through this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the y-intercept in step 3 using this point that they gave me. Okay, let me show you how to do that. So remind yourself of slope-intercept form. I know what m is already. I know it's -3. Remember that an ordered pair is x comma y. So I actually have an x and a y on this line. So I'm going to plug those numbers into mx plus b. So y is -2, x was 7. I don't know the b value, so I'm going to leave that alone. And I'm just going to solve this for b to get the second part of my answer. So I just need to add the 21 over, and b would equal 19. So I can write that at the end of my equation. Okay, let's do another one. I want to write the equation of the line that's parallel to this line and that goes through this point. Okay, find your slope first. So again, my goal is to write mx plus b. I want to be parallel to this line, so I want to use the same slope as this line. Here's the problem. This line was given to you in standard form. I know to say the slope, I need to be in mx plus b. So you've got to move this equation into mx plus b. So I'd subtract the 2x, and then I'd divide by -4. So that would give me y equals, let's see, -2 over -4 is positive 1/2. Ew, that is a disgusting y-intercept, but I don't care about the y-intercept, so it honestly doesn't matter. I just want to be parallel to this line, so I want to use the same slope as this line. This is not my answer, you guys. Sometimes people think because that was so much work that's the answer. But this is just the line that you want to be parallel to. So you just want to use the same slope as this line. So I'm going to use 1/2. I don't know the y-intercept though. That's not the y-intercept of my line. That's the y-intercept of the given line. I have to use my point to find my y-intercept. So let me do that over here. I know I want to use a slope of 1/2. I'm going to use the x and the y here to figure out my b value. So 1/2 of 6 is 3, and then I'd subtract 3 and get -2 for my b value. So that's my y-intercept, -2. Now you guys, this is what the new part of today is not super complicated, but notice that I'm using so many old skills from this unit to do one problem. So here's where math just can be the absolute worst, because it all builds on itself. So if you were struggling earlier in the unit, this is going to be tough. So you might need to get some extra help if you're struggling, or just buckle down and try to figure this out. Go back, look at old stuff. All right, one more example. It's the same question, it just is given to you differently. So I still want to write the equation of the line that's parallel to the one shown. This time they didn't give me the equation of the line, they drew the graph of it. But I still want to be parallel to this guy, and I want to go through this point. So they just gave me the picture of all of this. So the goal is still the same. I want to write y equals mx plus b. I know parallel lines have the same slope. So I'm going to count the slope of this line. So let's see, that'd be down 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'd be -4. And right 6. So the slope of this line is -4 over 6, which would reduce to -2/3. I want to be parallel to this line. That means I want to use the exact same slope in my equation. But I want my line to be different, so I'm not going to use this guy's y-intercept. My line needs to, go something like this. So I'm going to have a different y-intercept. It looks like it's like a pretty low negative number. I could count the slope down to right 3, down to right 3, down to right 3. Sure, but I go off the graph, so I don't really want to do that. But note that you could. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to figure out what ordered pair this is. It's -6, -5. And I'm going to use mx plus b to find the b value. Because I know my m, I know I'm using -2/3. And now I have an x and a y. So the y is -5, the x is -6. And then I'm just going to kind of work backwards to solve for b. Hopefully you don't necessarily need your calculator, but if you do, you have the freedom to use it. 2/3 times 6 is 4. It's negative times negative, so it would be +4. And then I just subtract the 4 over. I guess it wasn't that big of a negative number. It was -9, so that's actually not too bad. You could have just counted it, but I'm an overachiever. I did the long way. That's my y-intercept.